So, on the line now, we have Deven Ghelani. Now, Deven is from the organisation Policy and Practice and helped put together the Universal Credit in the first place. Deven, good morning.
Good morning.
Just the one thing I don't really understand, having not been around this kind of system, if every week, let's say every Monday, I'm getting paid £100, and then next week I go on to Universal Credit, so in 4 weeks I get £400, what am I expected to do for the intervening time?
Waiting for your first payment?
Yeah.
I think there are a number of issues with universal credit in the way that it's been implemented. So when I worked on it originally, the idea was fundamentally to try and ensure that people got their money as soon as possible. What's happened in between is that the government have tried to implement universal credit with austerity all around it. So they've tried to make savings in lots of different places. There are a few things that your listeners can do. I think it's just important people have the information to take steps to try and help themselves. The first thing they can do is ask their work coach for an advance. This means that they can get their monthly payment on that first day. So you wouldn't have to wait 5 weeks. You'd get this payment. The challenges that might create later on is that you'd have to pay that advance back over the next 12 to 18 months in small sums, but it is an interest-free advance. That's the best advice I can give. A couple of other changes that
and is that available to everyone, Deven?
Yeah, anyone can ask for that.
Right.
And I think the second thing that's happened recently is the government have belatedly recognised this as a serious issue. So if you're moving on to universal credit from legacy benefit, and you're getting housing benefit, for example, the housing benefit will run on for a further 2 weeks. And if you go on to universal credit a bit later in the next year, you'll also get your job seekers allowance run on for 2 weeks, which means you won't need to. They're cushioning that blow in that transition to universal credit. Unfortunately, that doesn't help those that have moved on to universal credit up till now. I think it's good news that some of these challenges are being addressed, albeit late in the day for someone who's involved in it from the.
I mean, it is late in the day because that to me appears to me just to be a fundamental. It's obvious. If I've been paid every week and then all of a sudden I've got 4 weeks to wait, I can't eat.
Yeah, I mean, Toby, it is inexcusable. And for your listeners, again, I'll say there are things they can do, like ask for that advance. The idea behind it is that the original idea behind it was that money that you get if you're on legacy benefits and you move into work, and all of a sudden you're having to wait for your first income from work, then that actually causes barriers to that transition into work. The issue for me is that, and I do agree with that as a principle. The issue for me was that there hasn't been enough money going into the system to help people make that transition. So ensuring that people don't have to wait as long is simply what the government's done is shift the cash flow burden of having to wait for that job onto the claimant when they move on to universal credit, which I think is inexcusable. It's just a one-off cost. So it would cost the government to cushion that blow. They've decided to do it belatedly, and they should have really decided to do it right at the very outset and take the cash flow risk on as the state, because, again, people on universal credit are typically those on the very lowest incomes.
And those on the very lowest incomes haven't always had experience in budgeting and making money last, because they are on the very lowest income. Budgeting doesn't happen. You spend money when it comes in. I remember those days very, very well. So has much thought been paid to people's ability to manage their money over a month?
I think there are 2 points I'd make there.
Because people have very different abilities, don't they? I mean, we're not all wired up, thank God. We're not all wired up the same, are we?
Well, they do have very different abilities, but actually, again, when we work with low-income families and those that work with policy and practice to navigate the benefit system, what we often find is that they are very good at managing their money. They're very good at making small sums stretch because that's what they've been used to. For me, I think the biggest problem is universal credits being introduced in the context of the benefit system overall being made less generous, the cost of living going up, which is putting more and more pressure on people's incomes, and universal credit itself having had various bits of money being taken out of it, some of it being put back in belatedly. But all of this serves to put more pressure on the individual. At the same time, you've got organisations like the council, like housing associations and others, feeling more stretched than they perhaps ever have before. And while they recognise the support that needs to go into low-income families, to help low-income families to budget better and other things, some councils, and I don't know about Sheffield, we're not working with them at the moment, but some councils are finding it difficult to make the money stretch to help them in the way that they want to help them. And I think it's a whole range of difficult circumstances that's putting pressure on low-income families, not necessarily their ability to budget or otherwise, just the fact that they've got less money than they had, and cost of living is going up, as it is for lots of other people. Very
briefly then, Deven, and I do have to go. Do you think there's a chance here that what's happened is universal credit is being used as a smokescreen to put benefits down?
I think benefits have gone down anyway. So if you're on legacy benefits, you're getting less money than you were before. Universal credit is just coming in at a time that's happening at the same time. And these are things that the government absolutely needs to tackle, because as the cost of living goes up and people are struggling, whether they're on legacy benefits or universal credit, that's something that I think can no longer be justified. It's been squeezed about to the bone. And it's difficult to see how the government can take any more money out of the system, and frankly needs to put more money back in.
Deven, thank you very much indeed. That's Deven Ghelani there from Policy in Practice. Dave